Hey, welcome back to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. I'm your host, Coach Zach. I'm here with Coach Zach and sweet as candy, Coach Brandy.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. So just, I'm more like, I just try to nail that intro and you're just like, hi, everyone.
I have to stay on brand.
So yes, right. Keep your reputation. All right. I'm gonna bring back the client of the week this week. We haven't done one in a few weeks, I feel like. So this week, this episode, we're talking about abs, and the question is, are abs made in the kitchen? Which we'll get to that. But we were sitting here before the episode, and I'm like, which one of our clients has like the best abs, and Zach, you said probably James Hahn.
Yeah.
Probably James Hahn.
I'd guess. Yeah.
His body fat percentage is very, very low. And he's just a super ripped dude and has been working out his whole life. Right. And I think that goes a really long way. So we'll make James Hahn the client of the week.
Yep.
Him and his ripped abs.
Awesome dude. Too.
Yes.
Love him. He's fantastic.
So just becomes best friends with everybody like immediately.
He'll just walk by people like training with the other coach and be like, great job. We're like in the middle of their set. I think it's so funny. But yeah.
He's bringing that good positive energy and vibes. So all right. Shout out to him. So all right. My question for you guys. Are abs really made in the kitchen?
Go ahead, Brandy.
Yes, and I'll start there.
Yes
and.
Okay, go.
I'll say yes, and I'll elaborate, but.
Go ahead, Zach.
Okay, kind of. It depends.
It depends. Yeah. Okay, so there's some similarities there, right? So, I would agree that it's kind of depends, but I think that it's almost like a cop out, I guess. People are like, well, I know abs are made in the kitchen, and which means what? That you don't have to train them?
Yeah. That's why I don't like it. So I don't like it because it makes it seem like I just need to eat healthy, so like the whole saying is just because you need low body fat percentage to be able to have visible abs. But I know plenty of people who are like runners that are very, very low fat because they just burn so much. They don't have abs because they don't train them.
They're skinny, right? There's a difference between
a kid just doesn't have visible abs. Like they're skinny. They have low body fat percentage. So like to say like, oh, abs are made in the kitchen implies like, just be very good about your diet and you'll have abs. Like it's not really the way it works.
Right. Yes. And it's like, if you want to have nice arms, you got to train your arms.
Yeah.
You're not just going to, maybe you might get lucky with good genetics or something and have like a decent looking arms. But really, like if you're not using a muscle, it doesn't grow. It's not going to have a good contour, that defined toned look that everybody's talking about.
Right.
It's like you have to train your abs if you want to have good abs. Yeah. Right?
Exactly.
So Brandy, she's like, exactly. We talked her into it already. We already talked her into it.
No, that's why I said yes, and because yes, I think diet and nutrition is important for everything that we're doing. But I think that yes, we have to exercise and train your core in order to see the definition in the abs. So you need diet, exercise, and core training.
Yes.
Ab training, not necessarily core training.
Yes.
Ab training.
Yeah. There's this, I guess, idea that I don't know where it started, a myth basically of like your body fat percentage has to be under 10, 12. I've heard different things in order for you to have a six pack. Would you guys say that that's true?
No.
I know it's not true because my body fat percentage is higher than that and I have a six pack.
There you go.
It's just where I carry my fat. Like I carry my fat in different areas.
Yeah.
So it's not like you have to hit the specific body fat number in order to have abs. Like, if there are plenty of people that I see and do their in-body scan with them and their body fat percentage is lower than mine, but they don't have abs. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, well, obviously you're not being a jerk with your diet, which is a good positive thing, but it's a different problem. It's not, okay, now we have to focus on fat loss. No, now we have to focus on the muscle gain and the training program in order to develop those muscles so that they're there.
Right.
So I think it works both ways. It's like, yes, if you have the muscle and it's covered by too much fat, you're not going to see it. And then if you don't have the fat, but you don't have the muscle, you're not going to see it. Right.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say any muscles are built in the kitchen. Like they're fueled in the kitchen, but like, I mean, if you want to be like technical, like muscles grow when you sleep anyway. So like it's not built in the gym. It's torn down in the gym.
Right.
It's fueled through food and then it's grown when you sleep. So like
So what you're saying is when I go to sleep tonight, I'm building my abs. That's what you're saying?
Abs are made when you sleep, not in the kitchen.
But yeah, I mean, if you wanted like defined back muscles, you wouldn't be like, oh, I need to fix the way I necessarily eat. Like you should fix the way you eat just to be healthy and like to have low body fat percentage. But it doesn't mean if your food like is now been on point for like even a year, it doesn't mean that you now have all of this muscle definition that you didn't have before.
Okay. So let's say that somebody has a body fat percentage low enough that, and they have, they don't have excess fat around their abdominal area. What should they do to develop their abs as far as a training program goes to enhance the way they look, if that's what they're going for?
Well, I think we talked about focusing on, ab, and I would say overall core training, which includes specific work on abs. And we do a lot of that in our programming at Pulse. We always have ab and core work throughout our programming. So listen to your coaches, do the ab and core work that we give you during your workout, and couple that with your nutrition.
Yeah. I mean, when somebody asks me like, hey, how do I get a six pack? I'm like, you train it, you train those muscles. And core work and ab work, you were like trying to separate those. I feel like they're the same thing basically. However, your core is probably, it's a much bigger system than just your abdominal muscles. But why did you say that, Zach? Like, what was your thought process there?
I think everybody always conflates the two and they like say they're the same thing, which your ab muscles is your rectus abdominis. That's the name of the muscle. Yep. That would be one of your core muscles, but that would be like one of, I mean, everybody says the core muscles made with different things, but like, it's probably like arguably like 10 of them. So like your rectus abdominis is very limited in
what it does.
Objectively speaking, it's largely useless, like outside of just being like looking good. Core to me would be like we do tons of core work. I say we don't do too much ab work. Clients always say we need more core and they don't want more core. They want more ab work because they do plenty of core.
That's what I think. I tell people, I'm like, what would you think the greatest like exercise is that you can do for your core? I'm like, I think about it, like, a sit up, and I'm like, try a squat.
I know.
Like if you do a barbell squat, like you're working your core more than any other exercise that exists. Yeah. And then like number 2, how about a deadlift?
Yeah,
like those are giant. Yeah, those are giant movements, and people don't equate that to a core movement. But like you're saying, core is kind of this group of muscles.
Yeah, and like even like there's also core work that we do that's not just those major compound things, but like that I wouldn't necessarily say contributes too much to like ab development, like different Pallof variations and stuff like that, different carries and things like that. Like those are fantastic core exercises. I don't know that I would say that would build abs. Like that builds like trunk stability,
transverse abdominis, and
like tons of different like stuff like through the hips and through the like internal back muscles and stuff like that. But that's not necessarily, that's fantastic because you need those more than you need ab exercises. But I wouldn't say those are develop abs.
When it comes to exercise, like movements, you get your prime movers and then your secondary movers or your synergistic muscles that are kind of like supporting the movement. What exercise, like when you're doing core movements or big movements that require your core, are you utilizing your abdominal muscles, like your rectus abdominal muscles? Yes or no?
I mean, I would say no. Like you need to brace. Like if you know how to brace, bracing is not actually your rectus abdominis. Most people, if you try to tell them how to brace and you haven't taught them how to brace, they just squeeze their abs. That's not like you can't breathe then. Like when you like if I try to teach anybody how to brace, like it needs to take like it's a long process, but like the first thing they'll do, they'll just squeeze their midsection and then you try to talk to them, they can't talk to you because they're like holding their breath.
Right.
So that alone, like I mean, like if you have to learn how to brace, like to me, it's not really like of course it's involved if you just want trunk stability. That like part of that would be to have like your rectus abdominis stable and firm, but I would say it's a minuscule portion at best.
Okay. So what would you say are the like primary ab exercises that you would do, like if you're training yourself?
It would just have to be any sort of like
crunching,
right? Any sort movement. Of like lumbar flexion, right? Like a leg lift, like not like a hanging leg lift. Anything that's like repeated, like serious, like lumbar flexion would be any of your ab exercises. You also cannot separate how you train your abs. I hear people like, oh, for their upper abs, do this. Yeah, that does not exist. That's
the
not
whole
possible.
Thing's working the whole time.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. But like any sort of like thing, like a sit up. To me, they're all the same. Like sit ups, V ups,
same
leg lifts.
Pattern.
It's the exact same movement pattern. It's just you can vary the difficulty level. I mean, your abs really don't function any other way. Like that's basically all they do. Like you just either are pulling from like the top down if you're on a crunch, or a leg lift, you're going from the bottom up. It's the exact same movement. So, I mean, anything rotational would be obliques, not rectus abdominis anyway. So,
but it would look really funny if all you did was train your rectus abdominis and then didn't train any of your other core muscles.
Yep.
Like you would just, I don't know what that would look like, but I don't even know that it's necessarily possible to do in reality. Yeah. But in theory, like if you just train that, it'd probably look pretty funny. Right. So it's like if a client says like, hey, we don't do enough core work, or what they're meaning is ab work. It's like there's plenty in the program and you're using your whole entire core. And if your body fat percentage is low enough, then we're going to be able to get that defined look that you're wanting to accomplish.
Right.
Yeah. They really only want like 3 movements or so. They want something that's like an ab wheel movement. They want something that's like a sit up movement. And then they want something that's like a leg lift or what. Like I feel like if you give them any of those things, I think they're
Zach's 5-minute abs.
I feel like that's it.
You need to do a video, Zach.
It used to be like 12-minute abs, and then somebody came out with 8 minutes, and then it went down to like 6, and we're probably at like 3-minute abs now.
Yeah.
We're in the microwave society, so we need like as quick as possible, as little effort as possible.
You just stand there,
have
just
6
crunch real fast, and then you're good. You got it. What about hip hop abs?
Ooh.
I don't even know what those are. I have no idea what that is.
I'm pretty sure Sean T, the guy that did Insanity. I'm pretty sure there's a like a DVD series of At Home, and it's like hip hop abs. I think that's the name of it.
I'm pretty sure I've probably done that.
You've done it before? You got it? Turns it on first thing in the morning. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Hip hop abs. Let's get it going.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, I know nothing about it, but I'm certain it's nonsense. Like, I would imagine most of what those videos were pretty much nonsense.
It's fun, but not a lot of like results.
Yes, fun, but it's just good activity, fun for the whole family. All right, so basically, what we've established here is like, there's very few abdominal like exercises that target what if people are looking for like development of their abdominals, which would be like the 4-pack, the 6-pack, like those muscles specifically. There's very few movements that you would do, and you can incorporate them into a program, but really like you need to target the whole entire core if you want the whole entire package, right? And from a last week on our episode, we talked about functional training. What is functional training? What isn't functional training? It's like your abdominals, they're a functional muscle. Like they do have a purpose, but their purpose is like to bend you forward, and then to raise your legs up. And they're not even like the primary mover for raising the legs up. Those are your hip flexors.
Right.
Yep.
So nobody wants to develop their hip flexors. They don't think about that. They're not, unless you're an athlete, then you're wanting to.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it for aesthetics purposes, you're not like, oh yeah, I want to have really nice hip flexors.
Yeah, I think like the tricky part too is like there's a ton of like conflicting viewpoints on like abs, like how much you should train them, how long you should train for, like how many times a week you should train for. Like I've heard like tons of different things like, oh, it's a muscle just like anything else. You train it once, maybe twice a week, let it recover. And then if people say it's like a very resistant exercise or muscle group that you could do it every day.
Yeah.
I don't know that you should do anything every day, but like it's very, I feel like that's why it always gets very confusing as far as like people trying to figure out what they should or should not do.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I with our training program, the way we design it is we're doing core every day or every workout, but we're targeting different movement patterns, right? So like an anti-extension, which means that I'm not extending my spine, I'm holding my abs and keeping my abs engaged. And then a core sit up, which would be an abdominal exercise. And then we have rotation, which you think like, okay, I'm working my obliques, I guess would be kind of like the primary mover for that.
Serratus.
Serratus. And then the anti-lateral flexion, which is like your carries and those types of things. All of them are training the core. Only one of those movement patterns really, I guess the anti-extension is some isometric, but the core sit-up is really where we're doing the movement portion of an abdominal rectus abdominal exercise.
Right.
So
yeah, and I think it's quite clear too that is our clients who have like, that's the easiest one, like for all of them. Like
that's true.
Carries and all that stuff is hard. If I give them like sit-ups, if I give them 10, like they'd be like, that's it. Like they would just fly through them. So like it shows like as far as like just the muscle standpoint, it's really like it's pretty simple. Like it's just one of the most simple ones we have, right? And it doesn't take too long to get pretty good at it because the muscle can, for the most part, only functions one way. So you do it not that often, and it'll get pretty good at it, doing it pretty quickly. So
yeah, and then back to like the topic of the this episode. You can do all the ab work you want to do, but if your nutrition is not on point, just like anything else that we do, there's not a quick, easy fix. You have to work hard in the gym and you have to work hard with your nutrition. You really have to do both if you want to see the results of, the ab and, exercise work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like we're saying that you have to train it, and we're talking about training the abs. But at the same time, like, I guess a better saying would be abs are revealed in the kitchen, right? Which would be like if you're blowing it with your diet, then your body fat percentage is going to be too high. You're going to have too much belly fat to be able to see the abdominals. And that's really all there is to it. So, but that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't train them, because you do need them for everyday life. You do need the core movements and the function of that to go about your day and do whatever it is that you want to do, going back to last week's episode. But if you're going for the aesthetics, it's like, we got to get the body fat percentage down too, so you can see them.
That's right.
Right.
How frequently?
Reveal the hard work that you're doing.
How frequently would you say they need to be trained? People ask me this all the time. My answers tend to like fluctuate based on the person and a number of other things. But what would you say? Like how often you train them? How often
abs?
Do you recommend?
Yeah.
Not core, just abs.
Right. So just abs. I mean, I would say once, maybe twice a week.
2 or 3 times a week.
Oh,
yeah,
2 to 3
specific. Yeah, working on ab exercises.
I train like 2, maybe 3 times a month, like maybe, and it's usually just thrown into like a metabolic type workout. It's something that you can kind of crank out a lot of reps for. It depends on the person, like what their situation is as far as what they need and like how far away they are from being able to like have abs or whatever it is they want. But it's just, I mean, it's something that bores me to death. Like I have no interest in it. I think it's so boring just because it is one, you can basically, you're so locked into like a specific range. There's not a lot of like, you can't really fluctuate all that much. Especially if you're somebody who already is like at a low body fat percentage and maybe you've already had them for however long. Like I don't think it's a muscle that necessarily like regresses as quickly as you would need other people. Cause I know people that like ask usually are people who are like on the boundary of like being like, they're not super far away from it, but like they've been struggling to try to get it for a long time. I mean, I would argue it's because they don't lift enough heavy compound movements. They're so focused on abs that they do abs. I would say too much, but I know a lot of people ask about that. So I feel like people listening to the podcast, like that's what they're gonna end up taking away. They're like, well, what do I need to do to get them then?
Yes. Yes. Well, and I would caution people because I have back issues, right? And so we're talking, okay, if I want to work my abs, then I need to do spinal flexion, right? And repetitive spinal flexion for me, well, we should talk about rep counts too, but repetitive spinal flexion for me can cause some issues, which is why I limit the amount that I do. And when I do it, like we'll train my abs, I'm moving heavy weight for the most part, and or adding some sort of resistance, and I'm not doing 50 reps, right? Like people are like, yeah, I got to do 50 sit-ups, or I got to do, I'm doing like 10 reps, but I'm doing a sit-up with an overhead plate, right? Or doing leg raises, might add a dumbbell between my feet or something like that. There's different, it's still a muscle. Like I don't train it any differently than I would like my arms or my chest or my back or legs or anything like that. I'm still keeping the reps the same.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's one of those muscles that gets like looped in. Like there's a couple of muscles that's the same thing, like calves, like where people like they think they need to do something very drastically
only respond to high reps, right?
Yeah, and like I hear people say stuff like that all the time, especially for calves too. It's like, oh, it's such a highly resistant muscle, just like the abs. You need to train it all the time, but like to me, like if you spent the same amount of attention and like focus that you did on your arms that you would on your abs or whatever other that's like smaller muscle may be, like muscle grows through the same stimulus. Like it doesn't, your body doesn't know like, oh, this is for my calves versus this is for my chest, So it's like, it needs to be overloaded the right way, just like anything else.
Yeah.
And your body doesn't respond pretty much to anything by doing the same thing over and over and over again. So if we just come in and we have to do sit-ups or a variation of a sit-up, and if you're like, oh, I did sit-ups today and then I did V-ups the next day and then I did, like, it's all the same thing. Right. If you had like videoed it and you looked at just like your trunk movement, it moves the exact same. And I think we have like the only core movements for the most part that we have, except for people who have like chronically bad backs, the only of like those core like top or whatever you want to call them, like different variations of the core movements that we have. The only ones that I really, for the most part, ever have clients have problems with would be the core sit-up movement, where it's a lot of flexion, where they can't do either any sit-ups that'll hurt, or like just the amount of volume that would be in one normal set. They can't do it. So then you have to kind of experiment a lot with it. But I think that shows like that, like the importance probably isn't that great, but it's also just something that you don't need to be doing so horribly like frequently, because it does put your back in a, just like when we don't want you to round your back in an RDL or a deadlift, it's the exact same movement, just reverse, you're flipped over on your back. So we don't want you in a ton of lumbar flexion or lower back flexion. It's definitely not a high frequency. So pretty much as minimal as we can.
Yeah. And if you have the back issues, we're going to prioritize or regress to an anti-extension movement than versus anything else, right? To target the same muscle group. So, all right. I can't believe we talked about abs for that long.
Yeah. Like 10 minutes in, I thought we were like, all right,
this is it. Let's wrap it up. No, I feel like it's a topic that people are interested in. They want to know that. And I think that a lot of that, just that saying, people read too much into our abs, made in the kitchen. So you heard it here first. Yes and no, I guess. So
just treat it like any other muscle.
Yeah.
Like, you don't train if you're a guy, you want to train your chest, you don't train your chest every day. It doesn't, or if you have and it doesn't work, you learn it. So it's just like anything else. Like it shouldn't be the goal of your training program anyway, is to be to develop that, just like it shouldn't be to develop one muscle in particular, and just treat it like you would any other muscle that you want to actually grow and respond.
Yeah. And instead of doing that extra ab workout, spend that time prepping some food.
Yeah. I was just going to say, do your meal prepping along with your ab ripping. I don't know.
All right, guys, that's all we got for you. We'll be back next week with more great stuff. Thank you so much for listening to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. Do you have a question that you'd like for us to answer live on the podcast? If so, all you need to do is head over to the Apple Podcast app on your iPhone and do 3 simple things. First, leave us a rating and review telling me what you think of the podcast. In that review, ask anything you want related to health, fitness, or nutrition. And if you want a shout out, leave us your Instagram handle or name. That's all you have to do. Then listen to hear your questions answered live on the next Q&A episode.